All right, short reviews for June 8th. Now, admittedly, I am not paying as close attention as I should to these short reviews columns lately. I just am a little bit burnt out on just music that isn't inspiring me lately. So these are pared down to just six choices that I thought were very much worth presenting to a general audience. And we get right into it with Imperishables Come Sweet Death. This is a pretty classic Swedish death metal, sort of a Dismember-esque sound from key members of Vampire, who you'll know from their quite popular releases dating back to the early 2010s. So this features Numinion's vocalist and kind of a loud Boss HM2 pedal style sound. It it promises a lot up front. There's quite a great melodic death metal song that starts the album, and then the rest of it switches gears a bit and stops touching upon that as often. So it sets up a lot of expectations for a melodic death metal album, but ultimately delivers a classic Swedish death metal album in the very kind of the Stockholm sound, as I would put it. Um, it's mostly memorable. The melodic death metal influenced songs are so substantially, they're just better than the rest of the album, that it doesn't count as much that most of these songs are very smartly written. I think the songcraft, the riffcraft, and the way they've written these songs is really the strength of the album. But the delivery is just kind of a little bit too straightforward for me. It doesn't take any real chances in it. It intends to be so classic that it just doesn't really shock the shit out of me. It doesn't. There's nothing. It doesn't have that it for me. But I couldn't deny the quality of it, and enjoyed my time with this record. Cold Dead Hands is the debut EP from I Destroyer. This is a black speed metal band, um, very much in the like maybe early Sodom and Bathory esque feeling. It's not quite as raw as that, but guitar progressions are pretty simple, and it's just kind of a very straightforward black speed metal kind of record that doesn't have fun and be. It's not goofy like a lot of dorky bands are today. It comes by way of Hoxton and a former Churchburn bassist vocalist, Barbaraz, who actually started this group and project back in like 2003, and kind of finally realized the lineup that was ideal back in 2017. I'm sure that's not easy with the limited number of folks in Rhode Island who are interested in this type of music. So uh, it's yeah, I think this is just a very straightforward, good start. And not to downplay all the demos they've done in the past, but I think this finally has the idea straight. It's got the right idea. It's got kind of a focus, and it was kind of the right time to pull this EP out, and it serves as a great introduction to what they do. So I'm looking forward to see where they take that in the future. So, Dead Quiets 4 is probably going to be something a little, it's almost abrasive for a lot of people to hear such a keyboard forward album. So, this Vancouver, BC based quintet is stoner rock, heavy psychedelic rock, and has a little bit of doom in there, but it's a unique take on it. Uh, the first two records were sort of harsher, more aggressive stoner doom metal, and on the third album they switched over to something that I would liken to maybe a certain Witchcraft records, a certain period of Cathedral, probably Hex AD in some respect, where they really honk on the keyboards pretty hard, and it's the one of the members of 3 Inches of Blood who's playing the keyboards, and they put them up prominent and loud in the mix, and they sort of rock around with it. It is a rock and roll record essentially, and one that goes places. It's not afraid to throw a ballad in there, and I think that's not really what a lot of stoner metal fans even are ready for. and it certainly doesn't feel like it's a balanced mix. Uh, the thing is that I like kind of weird shit. I like the bands go out there and get different, and in this case, it is a little bit over the top. It is kind of abrasive and off-putting to hear the keyboards that loud, and but like I was listening to Cathedral as a kid, and I like that, that kind of uh, over the top feeling of the music. Otherwise, uh, I don't think that all the tracks on this album work, but I think that the full listen does work overall. I spent quite a lot of time with it. I was going to do a full review of it, but it just didn't fully get there for me, despite the high rating. So, that kind of speaks to the confusion and the uncertainty that I felt around appreciating this album. It is kind of a weird thing, but a good weird. So, check it out and see what you think. No place of worship, no promised land. I'm called to While Comma is the sixth full length from Tenhe, a Finnish dark folk band who are typically accused of being a bit progressive, and I think that makes sense if you're a fan of like Imperium and Upal and a lot of the dark folk that took kind of a progressive or austere direction. This is a band known for their somber qualities, their sort of a deeper register of the main vocalist, and what I would consider very chamber. Their early records have a certain atmosphere, which is very immediate, um, with a timbre that is confrontational despite the soft and funereal motion of the music in most respects. Um, so as they've come back with this new record after about 10 years or so, uh, this is equally quite slow. It feels a little bit more organic and fleshed out, and a little bit more distant. And that'll be kind of a different thing for a lot of people who are expecting very intimate, kind of loud and rough neofolk feeling from the band. This is much more much more of a show. They put on more of a show for this record, and it's a 70+ minute record, so I think it overstates itself ultimately. There is too much of a good thing here. I think that they do kind of two main things on this record, and it just kind of gets like they've done it a bit much towards the end. That's really my only gripe. Um, I don't know Finnish, so I couldn't connect with the lyrics very well. I think the album art is just kind of average for my taste, so that factors into my score there. But ultimately, I think Tenhe is a group worth knowing if you're interested in darker, sort of Scandinavian neofolk and some of the more progressive touches upon it. So, if you're familiar with death rock and how that is very directly related to hardcore punk in California and other places during the late 80s, you'll understand kind of where I'm coming from as I describe this Russia-based sort of hardcore punk meets kind of gothic punk feeling group who have a little bit of a blackened affect that you would pick up on if you would. So let's call this a mid to late 80s dark punk inspired thing, which I think has some relevance to modern hardcore punk in the underground today, if you follow any of that. I don't think a lot of readers do, but this is a pretty smart choice from the kind of nowhere that is catchy. It has a definite vibe and a sort of fall down the it's sort of a draining experience that has a lot of energy to it otherwise. So a descent, but a wild one. I think in the press release they reference rudimentary peni, and I think that's if yeah maybe the later albums in the 80s and early 90s. uh so yeah, I think that the record is short, to the point, effective, and I think the vocals are a bit of a mush, and I think that the bass guitar tone could be much more prominent for as much as it's adding to the music. Otherwise, yeah, it's worth checking out if you're interested in anything I just said. So Sardinian heavy blues rock quartet King Howell have come back with a record which is very much on the road. It does have that kind of fear and loathing kind of feeling to it, where there's a lot of there's '60s kind of honking, heavy rock feeling that has a certain throwback to it. Now touches upon psychedelic rock, and in a really effective way. I think that as much as this will seem just like a strange retro record in a lot of respects, they've the more you listen to it, this is one of those albums where you just give it some time, let it sit, maybe skip the bad Rolling Stones cover towards the end, and you might have a great time with it. I love slide guitar. The harmonica doesn't bother me, and a little bit of heavy psych with uh, an organ here and there works for me. So this is one of the better examples of stoner rock kind of finding a voice in more classic music, and I think the themes of kind of being on the road read up with like a lot of the like the Hunter S. Thompson like biker era early on that just kind of fits with that late '60s, early '70s vibe that the record is putting off. So maybe the kind of thing that I would dork out about, but see if that's your sound at all.
Slowly coming down